Jonathan, the normal way we approach consciousness is that we each bring to it a metaphysical assumption or a foundational ontology. It's normally physicalism, it might be some theological approach, or there's some things that we bring to it, and that informs our theories of consciousness. I'd like to try to do the reverse and say, let's start with consciousness and try to rid our minds of what we believe foundationally, and say that when we just look at the pure sense of our consciousness, with brains and minds, etc., and if we could devise a theory without the fundamental, can we then infer a foundational theory from the nature of consciousness?
I love that question. And that's kind of the perspective that I've been taking. I think it's really important to just start with what are the self-evident aspects of our subjective experience. And for me, those self-evident aspects of subjective experience pivot around time. So first off, we'll just take for granted that consciousness exists. So that's the first one. But the way that consciousness exists is in relationship to time. It's intrinsically dynamic. It's always moving. Even if clocks were to stand still, I would have moment after moment after moment of subjective experience. It's always in the now. There's a certain thickness, a window of now that we're always moving through, but it's not a static window. It's always moving from one moment to the next moment to the next moment. And it seems as if at every moment there are options, that the time branches at every moment. It seems like we can go one way or another way, that we're not fixed on a single track. So this has led me to a speculative, what I call toy model of the relationship between consciousness and time, which I call the three dimensions of time. Let me just briefly outline it for you. So the first dimension is what we all take for granted, which is clock time, that we're all moving in clock time, leaving relativity aside. On Earth here, we're all moving relatively together. But at the same time, excuse my expression there, each one of us is having a different subjective time. And so subjective time relative to objective time, we're moving, you can imagine it as a window, moving in objective time relative to subjective time. It's a little bit like a frame rate. Sometimes we have a very fast frame rate, is when we're, say, in a car accident, time seems to go very slow. Sometimes we have a very slow frame rate, as, for example, when you have the films that characterize plants growing, or when you're in a very deep conversation and it seems like time just zipped by. So we have objective time, subjective time, and that captures the way that we move through time and also the present, because we're always in a particular position in subjective time relative to objective time. And then the third dimension is alternative time, which is the suggestion that at every moment there are actually genuine alternative possibilities that we're choosing between. This also provides a possibility for free will.
And how does the third nature of time be time? Because if you just have an option at that time, you're moving through objective time and subjective time, and those articulate together. So how is the third option time as opposed to branching?
Well, so it's time in the sense that it's different timelines. You're going down one timeline versus another timeline versus another timeline. So you can imagine this window, which is moving. Its angle influences the rate at which it moves it through objective and subjective time, and then it's turning this way is the particular timeline that it's going down.
And so, because that's a description, or that's a metaphysical reality?
Well, this is a great question, but in the conceptualization that I'm entertaining is that it is a metaphysical reality. So in the many worlds theory in physics, there's this notion that when we check to see whether or not Schrodinger's cat's dead or alive, what's actually happening is one version of is actually going down a branch in which there's a live cat, and another version of us is going down a branch in which there's a dead cat.
There's no choice in that.
Well, in that model, but that's because you're going down every possible branch. But if you, in fact, were only going down one branch, then that would actually potentially lead for the possibility of choice.
And that brings free will into it in a libertarian sense, where you could make different decisions.
That's right.
It's not the appearance of that.
That's right. And there are various different ways that you could instantiate this model, but the one that I sort of like is the idea that we're all tethered together, almost like a kite of windows all moving through these 3 dimensions of time. But because we're tethered, each turn that each one of us makes moves the entire kite in a slightly different direction. So we're not, each one of us, veering off on our own timeline, but through our own individual choices, we're potentially moving the entire system in a slightly different direction.
Yeah, that's something I'd have to think about. I'm not sure how that would work, but how does that articulate with the fundamental ontology traditionally that we think about physical or non-physical?
So in this model, it's suggesting some major variations to the standard ontology. First off, it's introducing subjective time and giving it the same level of ontological realness as objective time. Whereas in the current model, subjective time is just sort of an illusion. Whereas here, it has genuine ontology. And I think that has real merit, because if you think about what's of meaning to you, would you rather live a day that felt like a lifetime or a lifetime that felt like a day? I think we'd all agree. What matters is not how much time passes, it's how much time we experience passing. So giving equal merit to psychological time, I think, has real value. And then the possibility of actually being able to navigate in alternative time also introduces this notion that consciousness is somehow able to steer, which has a whole set of ontological baggage, perhaps, but also provides the possibility for a genuine libertarian free will.